After he said all that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the truth. I am not a very good speaker. Don't know how that was won. And I am no expert. And I speak Brackenese. There are multiple people here from Bracken County. They could possibly translate for you. I'm sorry. I'm from Bracken County in the northern part of the state. I farm there with my wife, Mindy, my kids, Abby, Ainsley, and Bryce. And on this property here, my kids are the 5th generation. Mostly what I'm talking about today is 110 acres that I own, and the 110 acres that I rent, a lot of this I'm still working on. This was actually I think some of this was owned by my great-great-grandfather. This was where my grandfather ran his dairy. I'm still working on it, water, fence, but I have room to grow more now. And about a mile, all this is within 3 miles of my farm, and about a mile up the road, my dad has 50 acres, and I pay him to background my calves after we wean in March. So my farm is really long ridge tops, incredible ground on top. Go 100 feet, it gets pretty marginal. You go another 30 feet, it gets poor. You go another 30 feet, and it's like this, and it grows weeds and rocks. My dad's a huge help to me, I got to say. A mentor of mine, Donnie Cummins, down the road. He turned 90 this May, and he still works every day, but he told me a million times, it's not how much you got, it's how you manage what you've got. On the right here is my grandpa. He's run the dairy on it that I grew up with. I'm the naked kid here. And I spent the whole 80s on the fender of that 5000 Ford chopping silage and spreading manure. So what I do now, 50% of my time is spent on my carpentry business. And the other 50% of my time, I am very blessed and lucky that I can just farm. And it's not a hobby for me. It is how I pay my bills. I switched from burley tobacco about 5 years ago, and I grow just 5 acres now of a specialty kind of crop, a cigar wrapper, and I've had a lot of success with it, and now I've run about 40 cow-calf pairs. Like I say, it's got room to grow now. But so as Ray said, I started out about a mess. About 10 years ago, I grew about 12 acres of burley. I ran about 17 cows only on the hillsides of terrible ground. And if somebody would ask how much hay I fed, well, how much hay I fed was how much hay I could put up. And I rolled everything, and that's how much hay I fed, and that's how many hay rolls I had, So it wasn't very productive, and I wasn't making money, and I was getting frustrated and tired. And you kind of reach a time where at the end of the year, you're doing your taxes, and you look and think, I did all that work for that. And, I could sit on the couch and watch Gunsmoke and not make nothing, so I wanted to do something a little bit different. But I talked to my ag agent, and he hooked me up with Dr. Les Anderson, and ended up starting out as just a reproductive study, but it turned into a whole lot more for me on management and a lot of things. And we switched everything to fall calving. We weighed all my cows and calves, found out I had some monster cows eating a whole lot of feed, not very efficient. We started AI for better genetics. I went from about 342 year-round calving pretty well to about 55 to 70 days, and been able to keep that for several years. Main thing that did, that gets all my nutritional requirements for my cows all contained down to one time, and it's a whole lot better to manage. Culled a lot of large and a lot of unproductive cows, and I started keeping extremely detailed records about everything that I did, and that probably helped more than anything. One thing that got me to wanting to do better on my grazing was nothing but mud in the winter. As again, I said, we grazed about 6 months, and then I just started, and we started feeding hay for about 6 months, and that turned into nothing but a mud hole, inefficient mess, and I'd feel guilty for leaving them cows after I fed them about February in the mess that they were in. And my cows weighed from about 1,500 to 1,900 pounds, and even once I got the reproductive part and everything of my breeding right, my calves were still only about 490 pounds or 500 and at best, and I just wasn't very happy with it. And it wasn't until I got my grazing right and all of it kind of coming together that everything started to work a whole lot better for me. A lot of things I did. Went to Master Cattleman with this grazing school about 8 years ago. A lot of grazing conferences. Watched a lot of Jim Garrish stuff. A lot of YouTube on UK forages. One of my favorite videos, a Ted Hughes guy, he has a lot of good sayings. He said, God made cows and God made grass. Anything you put between them is expensive. So I started using my cost share money a lot more wise. I put in a lot of cross fences, subdivided into 10 permanent pastures. I use a lot of poly wire, and I use about 5 or 6 solar chargers. My farm's perimeter is all woven wire or barbed wire. I don't have any high tensile, so that's how I use my electric fence. I ran about a mile of water line. Everything that I was culling, I was trying to be more selective in the heifers that I bought back, a smaller, more efficient cow. And now we utilize 2 rounds of AI with gender-sorted semen, which I really love because it lets me grow my herd in a strategic way with female traits, female genetics, maternal traits on my best cows, and then the rest of my herd I breed for steers because that's what I sell and that's what makes me the most money. That's what brings the most right now. I hay test everything, and I really started focusing on extending my grazing season to get out of that mud. I don't know if there's any economists in here, they'll probably shake their head at this, but I do still put up my own hay. I used to sell a lot of square bales. I don't do too much anymore. I don't really bale any hay on my own farm anymore. I make it all on rented farms or my dad's place. And I do have to mention, though, if I was starting out now, I don't know how I could do it, but all my equipment I was figuring the other day has been accumulated over the last 20 years. I bought most of that new, and I'm talking mower, tedder, rake, baler, square baler, roll baler. All of it combined doesn't cost what a new roll baler costs today. So I don't think I could do it now. But I make jokes that all my friends got expensive hobbies. They're always golfing or they're gone on side-by-sides or hunting trips. Well, I guess I'm bored, but my expensive hobby is making my own hay. I kind of enjoy it, and it lets me control the quality a little bit. But year-round grazing is not my goal. I want to be the most profitable and efficient that I can, and so I kind of strive for 300 days of grazing. And again, I own 110 acres, but at best, 90 of that is grazable, and some of that is not the best ground. So on that, it's about 3 cows per acre is what works best for me, about 28 to 30 on that piece of property that I manage the best. My paddock sizes are about 5 to 8 acres on average, and how I start grazing in April is, April foliar greens up, but it's still not really growing. But once my yard starts needing mowing 2 or 3 times, I feel like I'm ready to start grazing because it gets away from you. And I'm not a mob grazer. I don't move 5 times a day. I move anywhere from 1 to 5 days. April, May, and June is the easiest time because everything's growing like crazy, and I want to rake it around my farm 3 times by July, just as fast as I can go. When I reach about the end of May and the 1st of June, most of my fields are Kentucky 31 fescue, a lot of it. So I go in with a bush hog. My dad he's a great help, and he loves to run a cab tractor and the bush hog. So he clips those pastures for me. Again, after the 3rd grazing, whatever's left, to keep it vegetative and knock those seed heads out. There's still tobacco grown everywhere around me, and most of the weed control will affect that too, so I don't do very much spraying. Most true thing I ever heard anybody say was it takes grass to grow grass, Jim Garish, and that is definitely the truth. I try to take half, leave half. You can see there on the right what we just grazed, what we're getting ready to move to. On the left, that's what I like it to look like. It's not always how it is. It's been super dry, but when I leave a residual like that, it's tremendous. You can see the difference in what it does, that it keeps the ground cooler, holds moisture. I feel like it's helping build my soil. On the rented farms where I don't have as many cows, I don't have the infrastructure and the water, and I can't manage like I do on my own because I just can't put that much money in that. When it turned all dry the last couple of months, that farm dried up. It's a huge difference in and I still have not fed any hay on my farm where I'm grazing, with a little better management. So by the time I get to July, I'm coming up on that 3rd grazing, and what's there is getting pretty rank and mature there, but my calves have been weaned. My cows are dry, lowest nutritional requirements right now, and they do fine on this, and like I say, we clip this off whatever's left, but most of this is trampled. So when we go through with the bush hog, you can go about as fast as you can mow hay. You're just barely clipping. It doesn't take as much fuel and time as you think. Again, I grow tobacco, and a lot of my tobacco ground that's had a heavy tillage is pretty weaker in spot. It's still good dirt, but I've depleted it quite a bit by all the tillage. So I grow a lot of summer annuals. This is a raised crazy mix. I think it's like a 7-way mix. And my goal is to provide a good high-quality forage in the heat and get them off the fescue, but also to build my crop land back up is what I'm attempting to do and raise the organic matter and stuff. But my challenge is I'm growing this on my best ground, but it's up on top of the hill, and my shade is all back in those hollers, if you can see. So I got to get creative and make some different lanes and paths to go back to water, and to. So I'm still grazing my whole farm as we wrap around that hill and going down the hill eating fescue, but they're always coming up to get some of this also, if that makes sense. So it kind of helps on to help with the fescue and the heat. Let's see. There is some risk in grazing some of these summer annuals. I try to always test it because it's always getting super dry about this time of year, and I have had some borderline high nitrate levels that kind of make me nervous. But I knock on wood here, but I haven't had any problems. But I have found that, actually Jimmy Henning came up several years ago and helped me, but I found that a fat, happy, healthy cow can adapt to almost anything if you acclimate it slowly. Like, I wouldn't turn a scrawny cow that's been grazing fescue into that right there in July and leave for the beach for 5 days. You might have a problem, but you start them out in little strips and then let it get bigger, and they can acclimate to just about anything. And I use this and I try for July, August, and September. That's my worst months right there. I can't hardly get anything to grow with in that stuff. It seems like it gets so hot and dry. And you can't hardly stop that stuff. But it's different for me in a drought because I do have all of our old irrigation equipment, and I'm watering the back of there, but I got 3 ponds. My cows aren't in any of them. I have city water in all the pastures. So I can use all that for irrigation on whatever I need. Now, I'm not going to water fescue because that's not very efficient, but tobacco and those annuals, and especially, again, August, September is when I'm trying to seed something usually. So it's too expensive, and I spent too much time on it. So if it ain't rained in 6 weeks and I seed some to ground, water's expensive and it does take time, but water always pays when you need it. So that's the same field, a few weeks later after watering it. So the tobacco that I grow, it's really, really fast growing. About 70 days, I've already harvested it. So we usually start in about July 25th or so. We're housing tobacco, and the 1st of August, I'm finishing up. And I go on ahead and always get my cover crop out as quick as I can, trying to catch any moisture that I can. But I love cereal rye for a cover crop. It grows really, really fast. And October, again, it's usually dry. I can get out on that ground that's been tilled this deep without my cows sinking that deep because it's dry, and we can graze that. And it puts off a lot, and what I love about it is I still get regrowth throughout the winter with it. But so then when I get to November, some of my fields I used to square bale and sell some hay. Has a lot of alfalfa in it. It deteriorates pretty quick in December, so I kind of try to get the cows back to that. And now my cows here are at their highest peak lactation now, highest nutritional requirements, and they really do great on this to keep them fat before I'm getting ready to breed. The calves do great. In November, there is a lot of bloat risk in the alfalfa. I always strip graze it. It's funny to watch a cow. If you sit there, alfalfa that high, they'll put their tongue around it and they'll strip every leaf off that plant and leave that entire stem if you don't force them to eat that whole thing. So I use it pretty tight there and keep them in small strips. But as long as they're eating that whole plant and I watch the weather for a frost, I haven't had any issue with that, and they do really good on it. And so in November, I like to feed some of my hay in this month. This is when I'm getting ready to AI. I need them up close to where my working facility is, and I kind of pick the weaker spots and move it around each year. But I like to feed a little bit of hay in the month of November too and let my stockpile continue to grow. I do add 50 pounds of nitrogen almost every fall. I kind of watch the weather. I just put it on a couple days ago. It really seems like just that little bit gives me a lot of extra growth, even all the way up to October when we get 4 inches like we just got, which saved me because it hadn't rained in almost 2 months hardly. But it really seems to hold its quality with that little bit of nitrogen all the way up in December and January. It seems like the leaves are wider. I don't know, it also seems like it kind of protects the clover in underneath out and everybody. It just seems like it makes it thicker. Seems like it holds quality a little bit longer when I use that little bit of nitrogen fertilizer. So in December, we start back around the whole farm again then on the steep hillsides where the fescue is. And the cows, they really do great on this. And again, it's a big difference from where I was in the mud to doing this, and a whole lot more fun for me. That ground looks, that grass is brown looking there, but you can see how many head wrap around there. Those cows do excellent on that. Even at the last week of January, still plenty good nutrients to take a lactating cow and a growing calf. At this time, my calves are grazing too, so it's really helped my weaning weights and everything tremendously by getting everything out of the mud. So my preferred method is bale grazing. I've been doing this for several years now, and I really like it when I do feed hay. The stockpile usually runs out about mid-February. This is actually this past winter. I thought these pictures were neat to me, but if you remember in December, this was actually from December, these three pictures here, but in December we had that cold, really cold spell, and we had about 10 inches of snow, and that's the most we hardly ever have. But I saw the weather, and we saw it was coming, and we hauled hay back here to the field they were in, and we backed up to the field they had just grazed. I put out 2 weeks of hay, stripped everything off. This is what it would look like at the end of it, and I'm telling you, my dad even laughed. The ground was frozen hard and packed, and it was a mess. I was trying to roll those hay rings, and I'd stand it up and ski with the hay ring and all, trying to get down that hill to move them, but it looks like a black mess on it. I didn't seed anything, and this is June 1st in that exact spot. You can see my barns in the back. The amount of fertilizer and nutrients that does, boy, it really grows after that, and it works incredible on frozen ground. You can put a lot of hay concentrated in one spot without tearing it up. In March, I'm still bale grazing. And I put it, this was an old hay field that was low, and I try to feed it back on it. Again, you can really make a muddy mess if you're not careful on what you're doing. But so then on my tobacco ground, about March is when it's time to start plowing and turn the ground over again for my tobacco crop. And most everybody else around, the common thing is, and what I always did too, was, this is my rye regrowth that we had grazed in October. Everybody still goes in with their bush hog or their disc mower, and they mow it, bale it for haylage, something, or they bush hog it and mow it down. And I quit doing any of that. And that's a 2/10 piece of ground in my backyard we were going to plow for tobacco. But I put about 55 head of cattle on there, and it don't take them but about 5 hours. The manure spread, it's off there. I didn't take the nutrients off, but it's ready to plow. And they did the work. And I've been doing my own little experiment on some tobacco ground on my cropland where I do the bale grazing. Again, I have to be very careful because this is tilled ground. I can only get it on at certain times because you plow something 8 inches deep and you let it get muddy and you put about 60 cows on there, you got a mess. But on the left, I never bale grazed. It's the same field. I just turned sideways and took 2 different pictures. But this is after about 40 days of setting it. But I grew this crop here on the right. I bale grazed it for 2 winters. I was afraid I was destroying the ground with how chewed up it would get. But I grew the crop on the right with half the commercial fertilizer than the one on the left. Just a quick comparison from 10 years ago. I had huge cows. Now I got them down to a much more efficient. The best way I know to measure any efficiency in cow-calf is weaning weight per cow exposed, which is, doesn't matter how many cows you put out with the animal, with the bull or AI or however you do it. At the end of that, no matter what, you figure in everything. What come up open, what lost the calf, what calf died, what aborted. Every one of those animals, divided by your weaning weight. And that, I went from 311, which is pretty dismal, you all, if you do some math on that, to 561 is the highest I've ever reached. But I'm always 500 or above. And again, that's, you're always going to lose a few. That's not my weaning weights. That's my average per cow exposed. Again, years ago I went from about 15 to 17 cows, and I fed 200, 220 rolls all winter. And the best I've ever done was about 35 cows plus their calves at 100 rolls. And I have fed as high as 200 rolls. But again, that's the 40 cows now in calves. But, my cows are a muddy mess. Now they're pretty clean all the time. And I always make a joke. I grew up on the fender of that tractor. I despise spreading manure. It's the worst job on the planet. I wouldn't own a manure spreader. So now my pastime is I like to sit on the porch and drink coffee and watch everybody else spread manure up and down the road. Went from pretty frustrated to happy now. And my opinion is, and some of my people might disagree with me and think I'm crazy on this, but some of the grazing things that you watch on YouTube and everything, I feel like they completely disregard the animal side of it. It's only the soil, which it is. It starts there. It all starts with the soil and the grass, but you better know a little bit about both. That's why I really like this course and the Master Cattleman. I truly have seen people that can do one and not the other. I know people that are the best judge of a cattle and animal I've ever seen in my life. They can look at it and see things that I don't see, and they're right, but their pasture looks just like this floor. But years ago, there was a guy that moved in. I hope you're not here. I don't remember what he looked like, but he moved in and bought a hill farm not far from us, and I mean, it was rough. I'm talking, it's rough. This guy could grow forage like nobody's business. I've never seen anything like it. And he was going to run a dairy, and he didn't know nothing about a cow. And that didn't last very long either. It just did not work. I would say don't make it too complicated if you're just starting out. If it starts to become a job to you like it was for me 10 years ago, you're not going to stick with it. Do something that you enjoy. And don't make it too difficult. You don't have to move cows 5 times a day. I'm not saying it's not more productive, but you don't have to do that to be profitable. And you can watch 10,000 YouTube videos and go to every grazing conference in the whole country, but nothing can teach me more anyway. That's me and my daughter Ainsley. Just go out there and sit with the cows. Watch what they're doing. Watch your grass. Check the soil. Dig some holes. Just being out there and observing what's going on will teach you a whole lot more than just about anything else. I want to say thanks to the beef team and the forage team that we have here. I truly do think it's one of the best in the country. Not every state does things like they do here. And I really like to take advice from these guys, ladies. Anybody that is giving you advice that has something to sell, I would say, listen carefully. But that's why I like extension and things like this. Their job is to help and they enjoy it. They're not making a commission off me doing better, So, and that's all I got. Okay.
One of the things I wondered about, and I've talked a lot with Tom Cruise and Anderson County about this, expected rate of return. And at first, did it go slow for you at first, and then all of a sudden it seemed like you made 5 years of progress in a couple of years? Or
which part on the? I'm sorry. Well, how do I repeat all that?
Make your own version of it.
On the overall, or just the forage side, or especially on the forages? Okay, that's one thing I didn't mention was I don't believe in completely not deworming any animal, but it took a year and a half. I deworm only my stocker calves and my first and second calf heifers. Mature cows, if you get worms, you get a new home if that becomes a problem. It took a year and a half before I saw dung beetles come back to my farm. Years ago, I go to these grazing things and I saw all this talking about how the dung beetles and everything work, all your manure. I had frisbees from 6 months you could play with, But for me, it took about 2 years of better grazing management to really get to see the forage side really change. And the most important thing is leaving a residual. I can't say enough about that. How much you leave behind it's going to come back thicker and better. But it didn't take super long to change things, especially when I got the cattle right, a good genetics, a right-sized cow. It took about 2 years for me to start seeing huge differences in productivity, I guess. And then every year after that, it just seems to get better for me. Even with drought and all the things that have come, I don't know, I used to freak out over stuff like that. Now it didn't bother me that much. It always rains. It just did, just like it did last year after 2 months of no rains. And my pastures in 2 days from where they were still that tall, it's already, greened up and taken right back off. So Does that answer any of your question? I don't know. Huh?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I find intimidating to a lot of the, especially the newer producers in Anderson County, is we see it's easy to show people what 20 years of good management looks like, and it's easy to show people what 20 years of bad management looks like.
Yeah.
But the in between is what gets lost. So I try to tell people to expect that 2 to 5, 8 years.
2 to 5 years, you get the most. Seems like the most change, you know. So, and on those annuals, I'm not growing an enormous amount. My tobacco crop, I grow 5 acres. It's the best 15 acres that I have. So it's in tobacco for 2 years and it rests for 4. In those 4 years, that's where I use those summer and winter annuals to try to build that ground. So you're only talking about, and sometimes I put it back in perennials. It's 5 to 10 acres of annuals is what I have, but you can graze a lot of cows on 5 to 10 annuals for about 3 months. It just keeps growing. So.
Do you have a lot of residual nitrogen from the cigar?
I have an enormous amount of, yeah. I over-fertilize. That's a crop that cannot grow. It cannot run out of fertilizer at the very end. I have to have the width on those leaves to make wrapper. So it's over-fertilized, and I can grow those annuals for another whole next year with no fertilizer by what's added on there. It's probably not the best practice, but it's still what I have to do on the tobacco side of it. So I try to take advantage of the extra fertilizer I have with those. That's why I worry sometimes about the nitrate side of it, because there's a lot of nitrogen out there. And there's a lot of nitrogen from even the rye that was there in the winter, and I graze off and we leave. You know, there's still a lot of nutrients there, so I kind of have to be careful. Is that the one where you squeeze and you look at the color chart?
Yeah. I mean, I've had that done before, if you're concerned about it.
Yeah.
We'll show that to you. You guys are going to see that this afternoon out at the farm.
But you correct me on that too. What does it read to? Does it go to...
It goes to 500 parts per million, and it's more of a qualitative test. So that tells you, yeah, if you get a deep purple color development, yeah, I may have a problem. I need to send the sample to a lab to have it quantitatively done.
That was what we had when Jimmy Henning came out that year. I tested it, and it was past purple. Y'all, it was dark. So I let it get more mature, grazed it down, and it was a funny-looking sight with stems this high everywhere. But then I got it out. I got them out of there. You know, the nitrates is in that stalk mostly. It's not. And the brown mid-rib on this, that's the best. The cows do a lot better on that than just regular sorghum sedan if you can get it. I'm a little crazy, but yes, that's my... I'll talk to you about that later, but on burley, just as well quit, in my opinion. I wasn't making hardly anything on that. On this cigar, the return that I can get when the weather cooperates, it is well worth it for me. Absolutely, yes. Yes, yep. Well, I don't hire a lot of help. It's me, my dad, my son, my daughter. There's one guy that helps me some on that. We take about 3 weeks to put in that 5 acres. It is very time-consuming on that cigar, but yes, it does. It has a very good return on that when you produce what they want. I can profit more than I grossed off an acre of burley.
Any other questions? Can you expand a little bit more about the bale grazing? I had never seen that before. I'm used to where you put out the hay in the feeder, and then you've got the cows walking around the bud. So can you just expand on that? Do you lose a lot of hay? Do they just...
Well, I'll talk here all day on this. So this, I bought some hay one time, not one time, multiple times. And there are a few good producers that put up some excellent quality hay, but they know what they got, and they sell it for a price it's worth, and I can't afford it for beef cows. But I bought some hay one time, and it was nothing but stems. And after I bale grazed, the residual that was left in that bale, you talk about waste, it was this high. Like, I thought, am I going to have to burn this mess? I didn't know how to get rid of what was left. But when you put up good quality hay I store it in my hoop barn for all summer. And then I wait till the ground's frozen about February, and I watch the weather, and I see how much grass I have left. So I'll go out on, say, 15 acres, and I'll put 50 bales, 60 bales, whatever. I figure up how many I'm going to need to get through the next 6 weeks. I go 90 feet strips this way. I put the bales about 40 feet apart this way. And then I go in and put them all out there. Now, again, you're going to get a little bit of waste because it's sitting out there for a couple months, but it's been stored inside all summer. And so then I just give them 4 at a time. And I use poly hay rings, and I roll them to those 4. 4 bales takes my cows through 3 days. And then I just move my electric fence down to the next one. I already had the next one set up. And then I just roll my hay rings down to the next 4 and drop it on. And we just keep moving up the field. And they're doing the work and spreading the manure for me. And does that make sense? Does that answer?
So we've got some good videos of bale grazing on our KY Forages YouTube channel. We're going to talk about bale grazing in our fall grazing conference. We'll have Greg Halleck on it. Greg is coordinating a multi-state project with bale grazing, and he's going to present some of that data. So it's a great opportunity to learn more. Great opportunities with bale grazing for building soil and nutrients.
I've been able to raise my...
If you have rolling topography, start your bale grazing. When you start bale grazing, soils are usually drier, so start in the lower parts of the landscape if you possibly require it that way. Those wet natured soils are not as wet in the fall. Then start your bale grazing. Start on them and move uphill.
And
Otherwise,
think about where the water is. Yeah. I don't like to have my water on one end and work away from it and have them walk back through it all. That becomes a disaster. I like to have my water point here and rotate like this off of it where they're coming at the water from a different direction all the time.
Lunch is ready, but any other questions for that Bart? I mean, you'll be around for lunch for
Got one more question, Bart?
What about rolling hay out? You do that?
Yeah, I've done some of that. I seem like I have a lot more waste that way, but it is funny. If you take an aerial picture of it, you can see the strips where those rolls were, that the grass is greener in those strips. But I do have a lot more waste than I do with the bale grazing. But that's why I like putting on my own hay. I'm not always great at it either, but I can control. I don't like to feed holiday hay somebody put up in July with the first cutting. But if you feed pretty good quality, they won't waste very much of it, and there's not a lot left on the ground, and growth will come back up through it. And then I had one picture on it I didn't talk about, but I've went through there in perennial pastures where I bale graze and put some of these annuals in those bare spots with a little drill, and it works pretty good. That fills in, it uses all that fertilizer there, and gives the cows, they're in fescue usually, but it gives them something better to eat too in those fields.
What annuals do you put in, Bart, around the bale grazed areas?
I like that raised crazy mix for the summer. It's got sorghum sudan, pearl millet,
Just like what we had in our tubs out here yesterday.
Yeah.
cow peas, lots of different things.
So one thing that we've got a multi-year grazing, bale grazing study at the research station, and one of the practices